everybody, welcome back to T's Theses. For today, I have for you a doozy entitled The Sanatorium by author Sarah Pearse. But before I begin my review of this book, I wanted to share with you some of the things that's being said about it on Amazon. So first up, we have an eerie, atmospheric novel that had me completely on the edge of my seat. This is by Reese Witherspoon. Then we have this spine-tingling, atmospheric thriller, Has It All. This is Richard Osman. He's the author of The Thursday Murder Club. Then we have an absolutely splendid gothic thriller. This is by A.J. Finn, the author of The Woman in the Mirror. And then we have The Shining with a Full House by People magazine. And I want to start off by saying, this is all lies. These are all lies. First of all, for this to have been a gothic thriller, it would have to have involved haunting and fear. There is no haunting, and the people in the story, they may be in fear, but I as a reader was not. The Shining with the Full House, it is nothing shining-esque about this book whatsoever, other than the fact that it takes place in a hotel that the people can't get out because it has happened to be an avalanche that has them snowed in. That's the only thing about this book that could be even close to be considered Shining. And Shining, that it is a paranormal, supernatural events occurring within this hotel. In here, there is not. The only thing we even get that is even close to that is at the beginning of the novel, the main character, Ellen Warren, when she first gets to the hotel, there's nothing but glass. It's a very glassy hotel. And she gets this foreboding feeling every time she's encountering the glass. And so at the beginning, we do get that maybe there might be something supernatural occurring in this story. However, all that is abandoned within a few chapters of the book, and it's evidently forgotten by the author that she was even going to go in that direction. So before I continue on my rant, let me let you know what the Sanatorium is about. So in the Sanatorium, we meet a detective by the name of Ellen Warren, and Ellen is currently on leave from being a detective because she had an event that occurred with her last case where she feels like she botched it, and the person who she was chasing tried to drown her. And so she's on leave and she's at the hotel because her brother is getting married to a childhood friend by the name of Lori. Unfortunately, Lori ends up going missing, and because Ellen is a detective, her brother Isaac asks her to look into Lori's disappearance. However, as she begins to look into Lori's disappearance, she begins to find out some things about this hotel. The hotel used to be a sanatorium, and the main proprietor, Oscar, he has decided that he wants to take this sanatorium that was in his family and he wants to create it into something, picturesque. He wants people to come there, and while they're there, they get a little background into some of the things that happen in the sanatorium. And as Ellen begins to dig deeper, things begin to happen to her. She starts to feel like someone's watching her, and there's a point where somebody pushes her into a pool, and we find out that Ellen doesn't do too well with water, not only because of this past case that she was working on where the culprit got away, and he got away by trying to drown her, but also because of a drowning that occurred when she was 12 where her 8-year-old brother Sam hit his head and he drowned. And she's been suffering from issues involving this since the age of 12 because she has closed off and there's memories where she can't really remember what happened during that time. And she's also kind of blaming her brother Isaac because she feels like he has something to do with Sam's death. And so as Ellen continues on looking into Lori's disappearance, eventually an avalanche begins to take place. There's news forecast that there is going to be an avalanche, and they ask people to leave the hotel because of where it's situated, that, of course, if an avalanche happens here, people can't leave. Unfortunately, Ellen waits until the last bus happens, and right when it's set for them to leave the mountaintop, she They find a dead body floating in a pool. The avalanche does end up occurring and the police can't get there. So because Ellen is the only person there that can look after this case, the police begrudgingly allow her to do some investigation, but of course she is to report back everything that she finds, and she's supposed to be a bit hands off because she doesn't have jurisdiction in this part of the world. So as the story moves on, there is the big reveal. We do find out who the murderers are, who are killing off the people in the hotel, and we find out their reasons behind why they are doing this. And I had a lot of issues with this book. I had a lot of issues with this book during the course of reading the whole story. There were so many places in this book where I'm not sure who was editing it, but there were a lot of things that should have been pointed out to the author. For instance, at the beginning, we find the body in the pool and the woman's hands are tied behind her back and she's missing fingers and she's floating in the pool. And it isn't until Ellen sees a sandbag in the pool, meaning that the woman was weighted down, that she realizes that maybe this was a murder. It's like, how much evidence do you need to realize that it was a murder? Her hands are tied behind her back in a pool. Do you think she tripped and fell into the pool? And this is also the first book I have ever read that I have been ahead of the main character in figuring out what was going on in the story. There were parts of the story where Ellen is like, oh, this can't be a coincidence. This has to have tied back to so-and-so. And I'm like, yeah, duh. I figured that out several chapters ago. Why is it taking you so long to catch on? And my biggest issue in this story is the fact that Ellen is a very unbelievable detective. She is described as this bedraggled, mousy-like character who's scared to speak up for herself. And whenever she approaches anything in the story, she's always second-guessing herself because supposedly some of it has to do with her being on leave, which I don't get because you're a detective. You were trained in this. You were trained as a police officer and you moved up in the ranks. Some of this stuff should be second nature to you. And I don't understand, like, when she has to deliver information to the other police officers within that jurisdiction, she says she's forgotten some of the lingo and how to relate this information. And I'm thinking, it's not a spreadsheet. You're not learning Excel where you learned it, last year and you've forgotten the steps. This should be part of who you are. And another issue that I had with the story is all the evidence that Ellen finds, she shares it with her boyfriend, Will, or with her brother, Isaac. And I'm thinking, we've all watched detective shows and movies and stuff. Is that protocol? Are you supposed to share evidence with laymen, people that aren't on the police force? I mean, I do understand that she's technically not a detective, but are you supposed to be sharing all this information with your brother or your boyfriend or even the head of the hotel? I mean, I think that the head of the hotel should know some things so he can keep the people that are still there apprised of what's happening, but you shouldn't be sharing everything to the point where she's not even sharing half of the information with the police force because she's scared that they're going to take her off the case. But the craziest part about that is even the head of the hotel, Oscar, finds out that she is not supposed to be investigating anything because she's on leave, but the police don't know this. They didn't do any background information on her. They just said, this woman just called on the phone and said, I'm a detective. And they said, okay, you can investigate. I find that hard to believe. And getting back to how the author portrays Ellen as this mousy-like character that can't speak up, it's to the point where there is a murderer loose in the hotel. And of course, people are dying and they can't leave and the police can't get to them. Not only do I not trust Ellen as a character, as a detective, the people at the hotel, her boyfriend, her brother, the head of the hotel, they don't trust her. To the point where they are telling her when she brings them evidence that the murderer, she just saw the murderer, and she believes she knows where they are headed, they tell her to leave it alone. They rather take their chance on when the police may or may not get there. They're like, leave it alone, let it go. We'll let the police handle it. They don't even have any belief that she can get this done. And my biggest issue with this story is all Ellen has with her is a bag that she carries around with flashlights or whatever else she has inside of it. And she doesn't have a gun, but she is constantly running into places where a weapon is needed. She is constantly taking off, wanting to confront a killer without a weapon. And I am even unsure as to how this story even played out with a detective without a gun. It's like Andy and Mayberry. Is Ellen Warren is Andy Griffith and Mayberry, the detective without a gun who solves crimes. It's ridiculous. It is beyond ridiculous. I don't know how anybody has given this story rave reviews. I don't even understand what's going on in the editing world. I'm shocked that this story even made it past an agent, because her being a detective is such an unbelievable character. I would have thought that somebody would have said, take this back and develop it better before you send it back to. There is the good premise, of course, of these murders occurring in an isolated hotel. How is that not scary? Even, if you as a person, if this happened to you, you would be going out of your mind. However, as I said, Ellen is unbelievable. The story is unbelievable. There are times in the story where the author gives away the clues. There are times where there should be, the person, where Ellen should be like, oh, the person did this because of this, or maybe because of this. But no, she tells you why the person does it. In her thought process, she always comes up with the right reason why the murderer did what they did. So as a reader, we've already solved the story as it's being unfolded before us, because there is nothing left to the imagination. So as you can see, I was very disappointed with this story, and I cannot believe that Reese Witherspoon has such high praise for this story. I would have thought better of her. But as I said, it didn't do it for me. She does have another book. The story alludes to someone who has their eye on Ellen, and there's another story called The Retreat. Not reading it. No, thank you. But anybody watching this video in need of an editor, I edit. I find those things that don't make sense, that don't add up in the story. So that concludes today's video. You guys, thank you so much for sticking around. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and try to do something nice for a stranger so we can all do our part to make this world a better place.